It begins. This stage is a massive headache from beginning to end, and finishes with the hardest boss fight in the game, so we're in for a real treat. To start, the upcoming climb is what necessitates the parts I have. Outside of the spikes, which are very tricky, this is a lot of specific action in a short time. I need to balance between killing wolves, precisely firing ice bursts, and scrolling those bursts off screen to allow new ones to be fired. It's a lot more involved than it looks. The entire stretch beyond this comprises one of the most confusing areas in the game. The plethora of lasers play tricks on your eyes, and combining that with a ground scaravage throwback in the form of overcrowded space where no room is left to both dodge and destroy what's in front of you means you need to make very precise actions without being able to comprehend what's actually happening half the time. The ice slope is easily the worst of it, but beyond that is a seemingly unmaneuverable army of enemies placed in the very worst of ways. It's impossible to pinpoint details in this visual assault, so I'll just tell you the two things you absolutely need to realize to make this approachable at all. The lasers are for distraction and hardly a threat to X himself, and the charged shot can destroy droves of enemies in one swoop. With this in mind, a very, very specific path through the enemies, who thank God appear consistently, eventually emerged. But pulling that off while tracking enemy projectiles with a fucking Pink Floyd light show playing itself out in front of everything will give you a fucking aneurysm before it's done properly. This second half of stage is a complete non-issue. It's a boring waiting room between the first hell and the upcoming boss battle, who is pretty much solitarily what shoots this up among the worst segments. The Nightmare Mother is composed, more so even than Infinity Maginian, of countless situations where luck becomes the deciding factor well after you've optimized the battle as well as you can. To start, even with two parts which make X a fucking bullet, her movement is so unrelenting that any deviation risks you running into a cube. Because both cubes can change direction at any time, and fire projectiles at you which you'll barely react to at all, let alone in such a way as to continue avoiding their lunatic dance around the room, you are at constant risk of bad luck for the entirety of the usually overly long fight. Given their high health, and the small moments you have to damage them while concentrating on the fucking onslaught of attacks, this becomes about the numbers. Through innumerable amounts of death and repetition, I've developed the proper approaches to the bullshit that crops up in her movement and her attacks as best as I can. Switching between these on the fly during a battle which never gives you a breath is never completely maintainable, and even then, bad luck will do you in far more often than a mistake you made yourself. Her movement is the primary issue and easily a bigger threat than most of her attacks, but those can combine in unforgiving ways. Each eye has 4 attacks. Blue orbs which tail X and send shockwaves along the room in his direction. The second is setting the floor afire. Now you hope for a combination of this and blue orbs, or both eyes using blue orbs together. These are your breathing room, somewhat easy to dodge as long as you pay close attention and giving you lots of time to hit the eyes. Her onslaught of fireballs is usually rare, but she's wet for it in this battle, and even though they offer a window to dash through, they also cut off your dodging room for other attacks heavily. The worst part of the battle and her worst attack are the lightning orbs. Individually, these fire in timed intervals and so are predictable. However, the graphics on the orbs is lazy, and many are sent out at once. This leaves predictability a good guess at best, and in the end, my most surefire approach to this attack is to stay and move between areas I've had the most luck with in the past. There are no guarantees. This can be used by both eyes at once, and that makes any predicting impossible. Absolutely impossible. She can also use it while setting the floor on fire, and this one has to be a sick joke from the developers, since you obviously can't do anything but cling to a wall and hope lightning isn't fired nearby. Since the lightning appears instantly, there's no reaction time at play here. Each time this is used, the game is rolling dice, and I hate that. Luck is extremely important in this battle. When things go wrong, it's almost never something you could have dealt with had you played more carefully. All my strategizing, all my reaction and improvements through repetition, all it amounts to is improving the odds of me surviving by chance. Infinity Maginian is an issue of human reaction, but this boss transcends that by literally being impossible to accurately deal with. For a human player, the luck manipulation involved is laughable. This successful fight came after 30 attempts at the boss himself, which doesn't account for the number of times I failed in the stage, which is a lot. Every one of those attempts looked as haphazard and random as this one, and the sadists among you can rest easy because it gets worse from here on in.